Today, we will be talking about electrolytes, and the recent boom in different types of electrolytes got me thinking about whether I really know what electrolytes are. So I jumped to this rabbit hole and learned a lot. We will talk about what are electrolytes, what foods you need to eat, and I put together a full day's meal plan to get those electrolytes. We then looked at a few electrolyte products and see which is the best in terms of getting your electrolytes at a reasonable cost. Lastly, we tried a few homemade recipes, and at the end, I created a quality homemade electrolyte drink 99% of us can benefit from. Let's begin. As I said, I've noticed recently in the past few years, everybody and everyone is selling electrolytes. It seems the whole nation is mineral deficient or dehydrated, and these products are here to save you. They range from powders from companies such as Relight and Liquid IV to your go-to drinks such as Ketorade and Ketorade. And they are not cheap. These drinks range from $1 to $5 a serving. Got me thinking, what are electrolytes? Electrolytes are substances that conduct electricity when dissolved in water or melted. They are essential for keeping the body running smoothly. Electrolytes play crucial roles in maintaining proper fluid balance, regulating nerve impulses, supporting muscle contractions, and ensuring proper acid-base balance. Imbalances in electrolyte levels, such as dehydration or overhydration, can lead to various health issues. Conditions like vomiting, diarrhea, kidney disorders, and certain medications can impact electrolyte balance. For most people, some of the early signs are that you feel tired, have a lack of focus, muscle cramps, headaches, and thirst. So what do electrolytes do? Electrolytes include ions of minerals like sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, chloride, and phosphate. Potassium supports heart, nerve, and muscle functions and moves nutrients into cells and waste products out of them while supporting your metabolism. Calcium helps blood vessels contract and expand to stabilize blood pressure. It also secretes hormones and enzymes like proteins that help the nervous system send messages. Chloride helps maintain healthy blood levels, blood pressure, and bodily fluids. Magnesium aids nerve and muscle function and promotes the growth of healthy bones and teeth. Phosphates support the skeletal system as well as the nerve and muscle function. Replenishing electrolytes is often necessary in situations involving excessive sweating, intense physical activity, or illness that cause fluid loss. So now the big question is, how much electrolytes do we really need each day? Potassium. Adults are advised to consume around 2,600 to 3,400 milligrams of potassium per day. Fruits, vegetables, dairy products, and fish are great dietary sources of potassium. Sodium. It's recommended limiting sodium intake to less than 2,300 milligrams per day for adults. However, the ideal amount may be lower for certain individuals, especially with those that have hypertension or other health conditions. Chloride, we need about 2,300 milligrams per day, and since salt is sodium chloride, you can reach your daily intake with a teaspoon of salt or roughly 5 grams. And remember, if you are on keto, carnivore, or animal-based, there's a good chance you may not be eating enough salt. If your diet's filled with processed or packaged foods, there's a chance you're hitting the minimums, and often or not, you're probably way above those levels. And it's okay. It's all fixable with a change in your diet. All right. Back to the electrolytes. Calcium. The recommended daily intake of calcium varies with age and sex. Adults generally need between 1,000 to 1,300 milligrams per day. Good sources of calcium include dairy products, leafy greens, and vegetables. Magnesium. Magnesium intake varies with age and sex. For adults, males, it's between 400 and 420 milligrams per day, and for adult females, it's a little bit lower, around 310 to 320 milligrams per day. Nuts, seeds, whole grains, and leafy green vegetables are good sources of magnesium, and magnesium acts as a laxative, so keep an eye on how much you're taking per day. Phosphate. Intake is suggested to be around 700 milligrams. People on keto or other very low-carb diets, you need to be more aware about electrolytes, since you don't have the carbs to retain water, and you're eating less processed foods, such as cereal, chips, and other packaged goods, which are fortified with those minerals. And here's a partial list of foods high in electrolytes. Sodium. You need table salt because sodium chloride, pickles, and olives. For potassium, bananas, oranges, potatoes, especially sweet potatoes, spinach, and other leafy greens. tomatoes or tomato products, salmon. For calcium, dairy products, milk, yogurt, cheese, leafy green vegetables such as kale and broccoli. Magnesium, nuts, seeds such as almonds, sunflower seeds, whole grains like brown rice, quinoa, or whole wheat. Leafy green vegetables such as spinach, Swiss chard, legumes such as beans and lentils, and chloride, table salt again, and seaweed. Phosphate, dairy products like milk, cheese, meat, poultry, fish, organ meats, nuts, seeds, and whole grains. So what would a typical day be to get your daily electrolytes? Before we begin, our viewpoints are more aligned with keto and animal-based diet. If you are carnivore, our recommendations are flexible enough so that you can still hit your daily requirements. And if you are more of a 50-50 plant meat eater, this diet is flexible enough for you. And if you're a vegetarian, unfortunately, this is not the right fit. So based on the daily mineral requirements, we're looking for the following daily intake: magnesium, 400 milligrams, potassium, 3,000 milligrams, calcium, 1,000 milligrams, sodium at 2,300 milligrams. And all this is based on various medical sources on what the daily intake will be. It will be different for everyone, and you definitely will have medical professionals that question if those numbers are high enough. And that's a whole different other video. For now, we're going to use those numbers. Let's take a look. We're going to talk about that you need to eat to cover up your electrolytes. Broken this down to, of course, breakfast, lunch, dinner, then we'll talk about snacks. And the minerals we're going to follow up are magnesium, calcium, potassium, and sodium. Breakfast, let's start with 3 eggs. So 3 eggs, I usually go the pasture-raised organic eggs, and that's a whole different conversation. But with these eggs, you're going to start with magnesium at 20 milligrams. For calcium, you'll get 210 milligrams. Potassium, you get 420 milligrams. And sodium, 200 milligrams. I would add 1 ounce of cheese, about 28 grams of cheese. For me, I usually go for anything made in New Zealand. I just love the way their agriculture is set up. They're very small-based farms. They're not commercialized here in the United States and other parts of the world. This cheese has 25 milligrams of magnesium, 210 milligrams of calcium, 35 milligrams of potassium, and 174 milligrams of sodium. I will add a cup of raw milk. It is 25 milligrams of magnesium, 300 milligrams of calcium, 350 milligrams of potassium, and 120 milligrams of sodium. So for this meal, 70 milligrams of magnesium, 720 milligrams of calcium, 805 milligrams of potassium, and then 494 milligrams of sodium. Then we move on to lunch. 1 serving of any type of meat is around 100 grams. And that's like 3.75 ounces, so I'll just round up to 4 ounces. Your protein source in this example is beef liver. Now, I know this is unique, but again, with animal-based carnivore, ancestral eating, liver is part of our diet. It's a superfood. It has vitamin A, vitamin K, has your folate, has your iron, your vitamin B complex. It's a freaking superfood. 1 serving of that will have 17 milligrams of magnesium, 7 milligrams of calcium. So these are not really a good source for that, but it's a great source for potassium at 380 milligrams, and then sodium, 71 milligrams. If you don't feel like eating liver for lunch, you could always do pasture-raised beef, which the numbers are pretty much the same. I think with beef, the potassium is a little bit lower, but it's going to get you there. Then for me, I love my avocado. It's 58 milligrams of magnesium, 20 milligrams of calcium, but my gosh, it is a potassium powerhouse. 975 milligrams of potassium and 11 milligrams of sodium. And then with mixed greens, if you are on a carnivore diet, you might burst into flames seeing this. People on keto, ancestral type of diet, you're fine with this. Animal-based, you're not the biggest fan. Well, it's not exactly animal-based at all. A lot of people, what you can do is be closer to carnivore and animal-based. You can skip this and you'll be fine. There's other ways to covering it. Or if you want to take to the next level, rather than mixed greens, you could get fermented. Something fermented in the vegetable world. Now, what I do with my mixed greens, actually, I saute it just to get out some of the anti-nutrients. 20 milligrams of magnesium, 40 milligrams of calcium, 200 milligrams of potassium. It's a pretty good source of that, and 24 milligrams of sodium. And then I'm going to skip over to dinner. we realize that not everybody wants to eat red meat all the time, so we want to change it up. So we're going to start with a salmon dish. Before we get there, for this dish, we're going to start with broccoli and bell peppers. Again, if you're carnivore, strict animal based, you can forget about it, just skip it and you'll be kind of fine. But if you're on keto, you're fine with this. Magnesium is 40 milligrams, calcium is 40 milligrams, potassium, it's a really good source, 400 milligrams of this, and then 60 grams of sodium. For the alternate red meat alternative is salmon. So this is one serving of salmon, around 100 milligrams, and you measure this as raw meat. You don't do it after you're cooking. It's 45 milligrams of magnesium, which is pretty decent, 50 milligrams of calcium, 450 milligrams of potassium, and 117 milligrams of sodium, and that's before you even season it. I do another cup of raw milk. So that's 25 milligrams of magnesium, 300 calcium, 350 potassium, and 120 sodium. And that's another thing too, for milk, if you're on keto, don't drink the milk. It does have, it has carbs in it, of course, but also has sugar. It will knock you off of ketosis, especially if you're not working out intensely. So skip the raw milk and, maybe stick with an extra larger portion of cheese. I actually don't drink this milk during dinner. I do it maybe an hour and a half or an hour before I go to bed, heat the milk up, and then I throw in some raw honey, 1 milligram magnesium, 2 calcium, 11 milligrams of potassium, and 1 milligram of sodium. So dinner, we have 111 milligrams of magnesium, 392 of calcium, 1211 of potassium, and then 298 of sodium. And then if we add everything up, like I just said, we have for the day 276 milligrams of magnesium. And what we are aiming for is 400. So we're low on that. Calcium, 1,179. Our cutoff or our target is 1,000, so we hit that. Potassium, 3571. Our target is 34, so we hit that. And then sodium, 898. Our target is 2300, so we're off. And that's when you add a pinch of salt here or there, because not all of us, you're not going to eat liver without adding salt to it. And then, the salmon, you would have some seasoning. So I'm pretty confident most of us will hit the sodium. I need to throw this in. For sodium, especially if you're on keto and carnivore, you're not eating a lot of sodium. We are low on magnesium, and that's when I looked at the snacks portion. So one of the things, again, carnivores gonna hate this, gonna burst in flames, but pumpkin seeds. Now, actually, pumpkin seeds are quite low in oxalates. There was a conversation between Paul Saladino and another lady that wrote a book about oxalates, or oxalates, however you want to say it. So it's very low in that. Now, with the other anti-nutrients, I don't know yet. I haven't done the research. Here, magnesium is 150 for 1 ounce of pumpkin seeds, then 12 calcium, 223 of potassium, and then 5 sodium. With our current meal, we've hit everything, calcium, potassium, and sodium. So we need a better quality magnesium source. So pumpkin seeds will do it. And if you're carnivore, animal-based, you can replace that with sardines. And you all know sardines, especially if you've been doing this for a couple months or a couple years, sardines is a good quality nutrient source. So 1 serving of sardines, again, is around 1 ounce. It'll be 50 milligrams of magnesium, 390 milligrams of calcium, 325 potassium, and 282 sodium. Down here I have the calculations that with pumpkin seeds, you get 426 magnesium. You're pretty much above your target of 400. And then everything else, we already hit it. We're like 1191 for calcium. Our target is 1000. We're fine with that. We're 3794 for potassium. Our target is 3400. So it's not going to be detrimental to us, but we're above that potassium target quite a bit. And then sodium, we're at 900. Of course, you'll be adding salt to other parts of your meals. Now, if you don't want to do the pumpkin seeds, but have sardines, you're at 326 in magnesium. Our target is 400. So that's just where you got to play around with it. It's not going to be in the world if you don't hit your 400. At the very least, you're doing quite well and getting close to it. And then maybe that's where you get the electrolyte drink, where you sip on because you have an electrolyte drink that has that extra magnesium that you want. But if you want to take the whole food route, maybe you add another avocado in your meals, half an avocado or another full avocado for dinner. But that's when you kind of have to play around and experiment and see how you can make that up. And if you're open in doing vegetables, with the mixed greens, this is just one serving. One serving, I think, is 2 cups. So, and especially when you're sauteing, you're pulling out a lot of the, in my opinion, a lot of the anti-nutrients and a lot of the water. So if you double this into 4 cups, I mean, when you saute, it doesn't really take a lot of room on your plate. So all of a sudden, rather than have 20 milligrams of magnesium, you're having 40 or maybe even 50. That's going to be another good way to help cover your base. General is the meal plan of maintaining your electrolytes. Now, is it going to fill you up? It's a pretty balanced one. I would say that maybe for me, maybe a little more meat here, maybe a little more cheese, but then that's where you got to figure out what's good for you, but also, are you not overdoing it? And that's another conversation, but this will at least give you an idea. This is generally what you need to eat to maintain your electrolytes. So that gives you a general idea about a daily meal plan that hits your electrolyte needs, and you can say it's a pretty balanced diet. So let's say we really want to upgrade our life and really hit the gym, get ourselves back into shape. We may need an extra boost in electrolytes and in general calories. Funny enough, a handful of salted pumpkin seeds and an avocado may do the trick. But we all know what we want. Advertising and marketing tells us we need a drink, and for the ones who skip a meal, having an electrolyte drink is a great and easy substitute. So which electrolytes are key? And that's the issue. Is there anything out there that covers all your bases? The electrolyte business is lucrative. A study in 2023 shows the electrolyte market at $17 billion in 2022, with sports drink being more than half the market share, and new brands have exploded online. Just a quick search on Amazon shows all the different type of brands and there are new ones showing up each month. But are they worth the money? And there's a large group of medical professionals that say no. And when I looked into the calculation I did for the daily meals, I kind of agree. But if you skip a meal or you're starting an intense workout, a little boost does help. Some medical professionals do think it's a placebo effect as well on why people feel good after taking in electrolytes. Even more so when you factor in the drink's natural flavors and the sugar content. So let's take a look at a few popular brands. All right, let's take a look at Liquid IV. You see them everywhere. It was started up by an entrepreneur. He did very well with it. He sold it to Unilever in 2020. And let's look at their popular product, which is the lemon lime. Look at the ingredients. It stinks, but their first ingredient is pure cane sugar. And then their second ingredient is dextrose. And if you look at the nutrition facts, we have that they have about 11 grams of sugar in it. It's not in the world, but usually if you're trying to be healthy and whatnot, you want to stay away from sugar in these type of drinks. Which I hate about them is that they have sugar in them. They have that flavor that gets you addicted, and you're just not drinking one, you're drinking 2 or 3 a day, and it adds up. These things are not cheap. So if you look at the nutrient profile, it has a decent amount of sodium, which is great, 500 milligrams. It's not too shabby. But then if you look down, it has no calcium, is what you need for electrolytes. Potassium is not too shabby at 370 milligrams. And then, I always call this window dressing, like, oh, it has a vitamin C, it has your vitamin B complex, niacin, B6, B12. Pantothenic acid, it was another portion of the vitamin B complex, and these are great. I mean, the vitamin B complex helps with focus, with energy, helps with the immune system. So okay, it might, this is a sports drink, so it might help you with it. But is it an electrolyte drink where it's only covering your sodium and then some of your potassium? There's no magnesium in there, and there's no calcium. So there's definitely better options out there, in my opinion. And then is that sweet and salty flavor I said. So that flavoring with that sugar gets you addicted to it. And on Amazon it sells for 16 servings for about $24.99, which each of these packets comes down to $1.56. So it's not exactly cheap if you're having 1 or 2 of these a day. Maybe that's why you see at a Costco, especially for a family, buying a couple of cases, because they're not going to survive that long, if you're having multiple drinks. Okay, now let's take a look at Ketorade. It is not any better. It's probably the worst of all the ones we'll be talking about. So the ingredients, the first one is water, second one is sugar, there's dextrose. So if you look at it, 34 milligrams of sugar in one drink. That's almost like a soda pop. If you look at the actual electrolytes, it has the sodium 270, which is not really much sodium, especially if you're sweating. You're going, you're playing football or basketball, going cross country. It's not enough to cover your salt you lose just by sweating. And we'll talk more about that later. You got your sugars in there to get your little glucose boost, but that's a heck of a lot of sugars. And then potassium's at 80 milligrams, but it has no calcium, it has no magnesium. So in my opinion, it's not really covering everything you want in a electrolyte drink. I'm really excited because I want to talk about these two other electrolyte powders, and they're called Element. One, the founder is Rob Wolf, and the other one is not so popular. It's called Relight. If you're in the natural health world, you may know who Relight is. You know them because of their popular Resalt. That's their bread and butter. And this is a new product line where they've been pushing it everywhere. What's really interesting is, the formulation is almost the same. They base their formulation on an electrolyte ratio. They both say this on their websites, on an electrolyte ratio, which is sodium heavy when you take a look at it. It includes all the other mineral formulation here. And I'm really happy that they include magnesium because in general, most of us are magnesium deficient. It got me thinking of what is this special electrolyte formulation they're doing? And most of the time, the story they talk about, it's like, well, me and my fitness friends and, they're fitness trainers, we've been using this for our clients and ourselves, and we're trying, we finally fine-tune it, and this is the formulation where, for Element, 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, 60 milligrams of magnesium. And then for this company, they said we don't add calcium to it because it might build up into your arteries and cause issues and this and that, which I don't think that's really a worst case. There's other, calcium intense foods you cut back on. Having an electrolyte drink, in my opinion, is not going to kill you, but maybe if you're drinking like 7-8 of these a day, maybe it's an issue. I don't think so in general. And then it's sweetened by stevia. So some people are not a big fan of artificial sweeteners, but that's what makes this have a taste, at least, and they use natural flavors, of course. And then if you look at Relight is pretty similar. Here they have 810 milligrams of salt, so close to 1,000. It's not that bad. They break down the chloride to 1280 milligrams. I don't know why Element did not do this, because they're using sodium chloride. So for for consumers, it would have been nice to break it down, but again, it's not in the world, because I think if you're educated enough, or you're doing your research on electrolytes, that hey, there's sodium chloride and you have about 1,000 milligrams of sodium, you're gonna have maybe 1,200, 1,300 milligrams of chloride. But it's just an extra line on the label. It wouldn't hurt. Then back here, magnesium, they have 50 milligrams of magnesium, which is not bad. Element has 60 milligrams of magnesium. And then potassium, they have 400. Element has 200. And then, I think this is just a little bit of like a panache, like, oh, they have coconut water powder in there. So if you're a consumer, you're reading like, oh, well, I know coconut water is great for electrolytes. I've been buying coconut water for years. I've seen it on the shelves for decades, and they say it's a great natural electrolyte. I get it. If I formulate that, it would be a nice little push, little selling point. Anyways, you could see in general that both of these are very comparable. Now, the question is, why the heck does this have so much sodium? And when I did my research online, and I saw some videos about electrolytes and what's good, what's not good, there is one thing that caught my eye, and it's this chart from Sports RD. So if you go to sportsrd.org, you're going to see a chart that they break down of like what the world is in your sweat. And they have this little chart here that goes, okay, your sweat is broken down. Sodium, chloride are your major minerals in sweat. And then it's followed by potassium, and then a smaller amounts of magnesium and calcium. So that right there shows that, okay, the thing that's coming in your body has these 5 minerals. So if you're losing this, you need to replace it. And then they have their sweat consumption chart. And these are just ranges that you need to realize that everybody's sweat composition is very different. There are literally people that has saltier sweat than other people. But here in the sodium, they have ranges of 460 to 1840 milligrams per liter. Chloride is from 700 to 2800. Potassium is 160 to 390. Magnesium is from 0 to 36. And calcium is from 0 to 120. So now you're thinking like, okay, the formulation that these two companies are trying to mimic is sweat. And this is a good starting point. So then what I did after that was, okay, let me do a calculation for your sweat ratios. Let me pull up that. So right here, I have the sweat calculation from the chart we just went over. So here in chloride, I had 2840. Sodium, I had 1840. Potassium, I have 390. Magnesium, I have 36. And then calcium, I have 120. And I got this from the sweat composition. And look, again, it's a range. So my assumption is that everybody's going to have a little bit of these minerals in their sweat. And I'm taking actual numbers from this chart. And then what I did is like, okay, now what is the ratio to, since the largest number is chloride, for 1 unit of chloride, what's the calculation for everything else? So 1 unit of chloride means that there's 0.65 sodium, 0.14 potassium, 0.013 of magnesium, and then 0.04 of calcium. And I took those numbers and I used Relight. The reason why I used Relight was because they have the chloride breakdown. Then I put the ratio up here, the chloride, sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium with the appropriate values that we just went over. If Relight has 1280 milligrams of chloride in their mixture, how much of the others should they have if we kind of use this run-of-the-mill calculation of sweat? Now, there's 1280 milligrams of chloride in the Relight drink. There should be 832 of sodium. There should be 179 potassium and 17 milligrams of magnesium and 51 milligrams of calcium. If you look at the formulation, we pulled in that number of 1280 chloride, which you see, which is straight from the nutrient panel. And then let's see, we calculate 832 for sodium. They have 810, which is fine. Potassium, we calculated 179. They have 400, which again, it's not the end of the world. Magnesium, we calculated 16. They have 50. In general, a lot of people are magnesium deficient, so having a little extra magnesium in your sports drink is not the worst thing in the world. Calcium, we calculated 51 milligrams. We have 60. That's not too shabby, and it gave me a better understanding of why they formulated this drink that's salt-based. And the reason is they're trying to mimic the same amount of minerals that you lose in sweat. I want to talk about sugar a bit. The Relight and Element brand uses stevia as their sweetness source, so it's considered sugar-free, and it's up to you to determine if that's an issue or not. The brands like Liquid IV and Ketorade use sugar, and in general, especially if your workouts are your typical gym workouts, there is a good chance that you don't need the extra sugar. But if you're doing something physically intense, such as playing a football game or doing cross-country, you probably could use a glucose boost to maintain your short-term energy levels. If you go back to the sports RD chart, it shows an average athlete loses between 1 to 3 liters an hour. And for us Americans, that means anywhere from 1/4 to 3/4 a gallon. And that's when Liquid IV is useful. And I would prefer that over Gatorade for the short-term glucose boost. But because of marketing and they formulate their flavors so that you drink more, everyone is drinking Gatorade and Liquid IV, even though you don't need to, but that's marketing. Everybody wants to be like Mike, but nobody wants to work out like Mike. Respectfully, that's why we have an obesity issue in the US and around the world. But I want to talk a little bit about water. Water of today is not the same as water of yesterday, and as recently as early 1900s and of course earlier, water sources were more local, and water had minerals, and those same minerals make up the electrolytes. Today, most tap waters are stripped out of its nutrients, and there are a few bottled waters that actually have the minerals that you need. You have the popular Mountain Valley that has 67 milligrams of calcium, 7 milligrams of magnesium, and around 1.3 milligrams of potassium per liter. But I like the German water called Gerolsteiner, if I said that right, that has considerably more minerals than Mountain Valley. Per liter, it has 345 milligrams of calcium, 100 milligrams of magnesium, and 1,800 milligrams of bicarbonate, 115 milligrams of sodium, 40 milligrams of chloride, 10 milligrams of potassium, 35 milligrams of sulfate, and much more minerals. But unfortunately, these bottles are not cheap, and they do add up if you drink these every day. In general, especially the regular gym crowd like you and me, we will be fine with regular water. I doubt you will be diluting the electrolytes that are already in your body. But remember, you can get most of your electrolytes from your foods. You don't have to have an electrolyte drink. But can we make a homemade electrolyte drink that gives you a cheaper alternative, or a healthier one if you want a sugar-free option? So let's check that out. All right, so I want to do a demonstration of how to make Dr. Kinsberry's drink, and just because the way the camera is set up, I really want you to get a close-up of how to do everything, and plus you don't need to see my face, you've seen it long enough in this video. So his first ingredient he wants to do is using water, 2 cups of water. He's using sparkling water because the carbonation in there has a little bit of a kick to it. I'm using a little bit higher in mineral water, just because I have it with me. If I had a choice, I would get the sparkling waters, and they're about 50 cents, 30 to 50 cents a can. This freaking thing is like $2 a bottle, but it has a lot of minerals. So what I'm going to do is actually pour in 1 cup, and the reason is you want to adjust your taste, because especially if this is your first time doing it, it's easier to add than subtract. So after that, he wants to do 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. With any good quality vinegar, you want to shake it up a bit to get everything all mixed up, because a lot of that stuff is settled at the bottom. 2 tablespoons. It's really not too bad. I could drink this just like this. I was pretty amazed when I first tried this concoction on my own. So we got that done. See, it's coming, and this doesn't take too long. And like with anything else, you do it a couple times, it's gonna be bloody easy for you. Now, in their, let's see, new salt. Okay, so this is new salt. It has a lot of potassium in there, like a lot of potassium. I think for us, we say 2,500 milligrams a day. His range is between 3,000 and 4,000, and we'll talk about that later. He wants, just want to double check here. He wants how much new salt? He wants half a teaspoon. So you got a measuring cup and get this teaspoon thing going. And this thing is really, has a really kick to it, a salty kick to it. I was kind of amazed at how much it has in there, but we're almost. So this is a half teaspoon. Pour that down. Look at that visually. All right. And then half a teaspoon of sea salt. And so I use, if mentioning a Redmond salt, real salt, it's from Salt Lake City, the salt mines over there, and has a lot of other minerals, trace minerals and whatnot. So it's not cheap, but I use it. So half a teaspoon of that. All right, you got the fizzy stuff going, and let's see. So we got our apple cider vinegar. We got our sea salt that gives your sodium, of course, and your chloride. You got the new salt that gives your potassium. You got 2 cups of sparkling water. And then they would say on what you are, a lemon or a lime. So on my previous drink, I used the lime, that's why it's all cut. I would suggest what you want to do is stir it up now and just take a sip. You're not gonna suffer from it, but just take a little extra sip, or take a sip to see if the taste is good for you. And it's unique. I mean, it's not bad. I could sip this. And then they did also say, use stevia, which is this, a couple of drops, 10 drops. I have a powder, but I'm just using this for demonstration purpose. Anyway, so we got all the minerals, the electrolytes in there. To adjust the taste, I would play with a little bit of a lime. They say a half lime. Again, this is adjust to your taste. And remember, we only used 1 cup of water in here. So you can easily add more water to dilute taste. And also, of course, with a lime, you have sodium and other minerals in there. But this is it. Dr. Kinsberry says you need 4,000 to 5,000 milligrams of potassium each day, which is well above the 3,400 milligrams we have in our calculations. And this will bring up another subject matter, like who's right? And I will briefly go in this because if you read Dr. Wesley Price's book, Nutritional and Physical Degeneration, he analyzed that minerals that were taken from groups of people who lived a very healthy and active lives, their mineral and vitamin take were substantially higher than what we recommend nowadays. And that's for another discussion. So let's break down the cost. If you use a generic seltzer water, the cost will be about $1.20 a drink. But if you use filtered water, the cost goes down to 70 cents. Dr. Ken Berry's mix is good, and he knows what the keto followers need. Since I'm more animal-based with some plant food, I want something that reflects more and what's in line from what I lose from sweating. So after all of the above research, I feel that elements and relight ratios are the ones I want to follow. So let's show you what I have figured out. Okay, so I want to give you another demonstration of a formulation I made after doing all my research. Dr. Ken Berry's Ketorade is great. He knows what the keto followers need. It has most electrolytes, but one of the things I was a little bit concerned about it was the lack of magnesium. In general, we are very magnesium deficient, and I wanted something that actually, because during my research, I found that the two formulas that I do like is the Relight and the Element electrolyte powder drinks, because they mimic the sweat makeup, which is very sodium heavy, but also has your potassium, calcium, and magnesium as well. But if you're gonna sweat that out, and that's if you're doing this very intense workout, because in general, we don't really need electrolytes in my opinion, but if you're gonna have an intense workout where you're sweating profusely, you want something that's going to replicate what you excreted out, right? Or you excreted. So what I'm doing is a formulation that is a balanced formula. And it doesn't really take that much time as well. These are the first thing I want to use is trace minerals. And if you haven't heard of it, it's really popular in the health world. It's not cheap. This thing has 48 servings, and I think it's like $31, $32, maybe $35. And that's if you take a full, I think, half teaspoon, which is roughly 40 drops. We're not gonna be using that much. We're actually gonna be using 10 drops. And what this is good for is a good source of magnesium, and that's what I was looking for. A good source of chloride without the sodium, and then has your sulfate, lithium, boron, and probably many other trace minerals. With the view of managing your cost, I am using filtered water here. You could use a high-end quality water like this one, push your price really up there, or you could use sparkling water. But anyways, we're using filtered water for this time around. We're gonna start with the trace minerals. It's gonna be only 10 drops. 1, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the next step is, now you got your magnesium, you got your decent amount of chloride. What I want is my sodium, so the real salt. That's what I'm using. I like it in the previous demonstration. It's real salt. They're based in Utah. Their claim to fame is that it's from the salt mines in Utah, of course, but it has a lot of trace minerals that you don't find in other salts. Using half a teaspoon. I know what I'm around here somewhere. Okay, here it is. Half a teaspoon of this. Throw it in there. So now I got my sodium. I got my magnesium chloride. What I want to do is get my potassium. Now, I don't want the amount of potassium that Dr. Ken Berry or Dr. Perry wanted, but we do need some potassium in there. Rather than a half a teaspoon, I think is what he had, we're doing 1/8 of a teaspoon to get ourselves around 300 to 350 milligrams of potassium. I'm using a 1/4 teaspoon, so I'm just gonna do half. And it's out in the world, get it exact. Throw that in there. That right there is my version of a decent, well-balanced electrolyte drink that gives your sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium, and chloride balance that mimics what sweat is. And let's see. So for me, I'm okay with this. It does taste like salt water because that's just what it is. I did play around with it that if you throw in a little bit of a lime, for me it's a squeeze. And remember, this is only 1 cup of water. You always could add more cups of water to it, like another cup, to dilute the salt. Yeah, let me see how this tastes. All right, a little lime. Okay, so it has a little bit of lemony taste. And then with most of these drinks, a lot of people look at this and you have people complain, oh, it's so salty. Well, that's what sweat is. You're replacing your sweat. And people complain. Well, stop your complaining and play around with it, adjust it. If you have to throw in stevia, then throw in stevia. If you have to throw in some type of flavoring, maybe do that. If you get frustrated in the beginning, just relax and try it again. And the third time and the fourth time. And I guarantee you, after 5 tries, you're going to get sort of the flavoring and the combination that you want. When we do our cost comparison, this is one of the cheapest ones out there. I think my cost, if I use filtered water, is 13 cents a drink. And if you want to use sparkling water, it's an extra 50 cents. So it's just 63 cents for this. Hopefully this gives you some insight. We went through various electrolyte drinks, the Ketorade, Liquid IV, the Element, the Electrolyte. We've done the homemade drinks, Dr. Ken Berry's awesome, famous Ketorade drink or Ketorade drink, and then our homemade Trace Minerals blend. Now the big question is, what's better? What's cheaper? What's the best one to buy? So we're gonna look at this chart. In this chart, we broke down the costs of each drink, and then we broke down the electrolytes, the sodium, the sugar, the potassium, the magnesium, and then the calcium if they have it. And we're gonna start with the first one, Ketorade. Ketorade has 270 milligrams of sodium, 34 milligrams of sugar, which is crazy, and 800 milligrams of potassium. If we stick with the calculation we did of what's in sweat, this really doesn't cover it. And at $2.30 bottle, that adds up. This company has been around for decades. They got their marketing machine. I mean, they have Michael Jordan, whatever other famous sports person they have to promote the stuff, and that's just what marketing and commerce is. But it's not the best option. Liquid IV, 600 milligrams of sodium, 11 milligrams of sugar, 370 milligrams of potassium. It doesn't have any magnesium, no calcium, and it's about $1.56 a packet. Now they do have a sugar-free version. We need the magnesium, and that's my focus. It's not too shabby, but it is not something I will put on my shelf. Now, after doing this research, I would probably go to Whole Foods and buy one of their packets just to try it out, and that's pretty much it. Third one we talked about is Element. 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 0 grams of sugar, but they're using a sugar substitute, stevia, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium. So finally, we're finding something with magnesium, and their cost is $1.35. Not the worst thing in the world, but because there's other alternatives that are much cheaper. Again, it's not my top choice, but I would be intrigued. I would definitely buy a single packet sachet at the Whole Foods down the street if they have it there, and see how it tastes like. Take a look at Electrolyte. Electrolyte, 800 milligrams sodium, 400 milligrams of potassium, of course 0 grams of sugar. They use that sugar substitute stevia, 400 milligrams of potassium, 50 milligrams of magnesium. All right, we're getting some of that magnesium we're looking for, and 60 grams of calcium, which Element doesn't have. This would be the drink. It replicates the loss of sweat, and it's 72 cents drink, which is almost 50% off of Element. And the exact same thing. So now you're playing a game of marketing, because with Element, if you listen to your podcast, if you watch YouTube videos, they advertise everywhere, and they're selling quite well. Electrolyte, it's up and coming brand. It's part of a bigger brand. They're doing their best, and maybe right now that's why they're cheap, to get market share, and maybe they'll change the prices after that. That's enough economics for today. Let's take a look at Dr. Ken Berry. This is where it gets tricky. Dr. Ken Berry, 1,500 milligrams of sodium, but the thing is, you can adjust it. Add more salt or add less salt. Sure, 0 grams of sugar, even though he suggests using stevia drops, and then essential oils, which I'm not the biggest fan of, even if they're digestible. I just don't care for that. Potassium, 1,400 milligrams, 15 milligrams of magnesium, because that's coming from the limes and lemons, but in general, it's not a good magnesium source. And then, 14 milligrams of calcium. Most of these are coming from the limes. You're using a little bit of apple cider vinegar. The magnesium's coming from the sea salt, Well, we're using real salt, sea salt, and then from the line. So now we'll take a look at the cost. And the cost is, from 70 cents to $1.20. It's $1.20 if you use 2 cups of sparkling water, which is, roughly a can. They go for 50 cents. If you get the higher quality mineral water, it could add another $1 to it, man. It could become like a $2 drink without a doubt. If you just use filtered water now, yeah, there's some cost of the filters, but we're not gonna go that detail. It's a 70 cents drink. Now we go to my formulation. We have, I'm trying to mimic Element and Electrolytes formulations. With ours, we have 1,000 milligrams of sodium from our salt, 0 sugar. We're not even using stevia. Potassium is 389. 70 milligrams of magnesium because we're using trace minerals as a source. We only did 10 drops. If you want more magnesium, add a couple more drops. 2 milligrams of calcium. So, okay, maybe we could do a little bit better there, but again, it's not in the world. Eat some cheese if you want, right? Now, the great thing is my cost is 13 cents. If you use filtered water, this drink is 13 freaking cents. And then you still have some change. If you want to go all classy and you get San Pellegrino, it raises the cost to 63 cents. And if you use the German waters or the Mountain Valley, it's probably like $1.25. But 13 cents, a freaking drink. That's my go-to. If I have an issue with electrolytes, I would try to get out of my meals. I have to be more conscientious and make sure I'm eating a well-balanced meal. If I don't, I'm going to do the trace minerals thing. If I'm in a hurry, I will do the Electrolyte. Try to make your life where that you're getting everything from Whole Foods. These drinks should not be a daily thing. These should be something where you have an off day. And because of those freaking natural flavors, flavoring it like grape, fruit punch, and then you're throwing in sugar or a sugar substitute so that it tastes sweet, it gets you addicted to it, man. It gets you to buy more. These electrolyte drinks, it's sort of a precursor of like, are you living a healthy life or not? And if you're doing this every day, outside of, there's a medical need, there's a certain situation, and I know people poke holes in this theory, but if you have to do this every day just to feel good, then take a step back and look at other parts of your life. While researching electrolyte drinks and realizing you need about 1,000 milligrams of sodium to replace lost sweat from an intense workout, I realized how people complain how salty the drinks are. And maybe that's why Liquid IV and Gatorade are not that salty, because a higher number of consumers are not going to like it. And if you go to Amazon and look at the reviews for Elements and Electrolyte, people complain it tastes too salty. And my guess is that these are casual drinkers, not really the type who need to be drinking these powders that are designed for intense activity. And the 30-minute speed walking on the treadmill isn't it. I'm more convinced now that many of us don't need these drink mixes unless your daily meals are not hitting the electrolyte minimums. I do feel many of these electrolyte drinks are an alternative to drinking sodas. Most of them have less sugar than a Coke or a Mountain Dew, and because they are electrolytes, it's considered a healthy drink. And the companies get you with their flavoring, and for some of them, the lower amounts of sugar. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I personally learned a lot and will focus on getting my electrolytes via Whole Foods. And I feel more educated on what I need to do if I need to get more electrolytes. I'll probably use my homemade recipe as my go-to drink. So let me know what you think about this episode. Leave a comment so that I can read the feedback and improve my videos. Thank you.